Creepy-Cartel-Dude, it's 4:30 a.m., let's do this. It's a bit of a read because I ramble. So, first things first, some background. My mom was a pimp for a cartel. That's the main reason I was even exposed to this guy. My mother was a petite blonde woman who looked like a soccer mom. We don't know when she began to work for them or how she got involved with them exactly, but we do live in a cartel town on the Mexican border. So it isn't completely out of the blue. My older sister's godmother's father was a big-name drug lord in the 80s in the Gulf Cartel, and almost everyone around here either works for them, indirectly or directly, or knows someone who does. We also have some Zetas here and there, but as we're literally across the border from Matamoros, we get Gulf more. That's just the culture here. Now, the let's not meet again encounter begins with my mom's coworker, Jose. He was just creepy. Now when he started showing up, my sister and I had no clue our mom was involved in the cartel. She did a good job of keeping it from us up until this point. I was around 11 when he started showing up. I've always been a really good judge of character, like a fucking dog, so I immediately didn't like him. My sister thought I was being paranoid, but as he came around more, she started feeling it more. Eventually, he started dating my mom. I say dating, but it's more like he started owning her. She became a different woman, but it was clear she did her best to keep him away from my sister and he had eyes for us. When I was 13, he became engaged to my mom. Now, something you need to understand is that where we live, white people make up like 1% of the population. So my mom and sister, blonde with blue eyes, were pretty much always the center of attention. I was pretty white too, and as a result of how rare we were down here, in school my sister was used to getting hit on pretty much 24/7. Unfortunately, this ended up happening at home too. This man was constantly creeping on my sister. He would touch her shoulders and massage them, like completely creepy. My sister is about 2 years older than me, and she started leaving the house a lot to avoid him. She pretty much holed herself up at school, friends' houses or church, leaving me to deal with him. He didn't seem to even realize I existed until I got a growth spurt. I was always a techie kid, so he started trying to talk to me about tech stuff. He figured out I knew how to reset laptops and stuff in case people forgot their passwords. I did it for a couple of older folks here and there. He started showing up with laptops asking me to reset them. I immediately realized they were stolen laptops, but I reset them anyway. He gave me money for it, and I didn't know the people he stole them from, so I didn't care. After this had gone on for a while, he started doing the creepy massage thing and telling me how my mom and my sister were like identical to each other, but I was different. I was the black sheep, but I was more like a classical Spanish beautiful and all this other creepy shit about my skin being soft. I pretty much noped out of that and started doing the stay locked in my room thing too. My mom meanwhile was constantly at work or her work thing. He eventually moved in, which is when I started sleeping with a kitchen knife under my pillow. He was never able to safely come to my room or my sister's room because our dogs, a tiny vicious corgi and a 70-pound pit bull, both hated him, so they slept with us. He had tried coming into my room once at night when I was asleep and the dogs pretty much chased him out. He claimed he was going to talk to me, at 3 a.m. on a school night when I was already asleep. And any time he mentioned wanting to get rid of the dogs, my sister and I both pretty much immediately changed the subject. Now, we're not stupid. We knew he might try something to get rid of them. We worried he'd hurt the dogs or take them to the shelter all the time. We even had our neighbor watch the dogs in his yard during the day to make sure he didn't do anything sketchy with them. We told him that the dogs wanted to play with his, and he seemed to suspect something, but he never pushed and let us leave them with him. He was a cool guy. His boyfriend and him liked grooming them too. I'm thankful we were able to keep the dogs from him. I'd hate to think of what would have happened if they weren't there at night. So, he kept trying to approach me, I kept avoiding him. He started saying he wanted to take me somewhere private on his motorcycle, I kept refusing. At this point, my sister had pretty much dropped from his radar. He was 100% zoned in on me. I don't even think he noticed my mom too often. As I kept pretty much dodging his advances, my mom started getting mysterious bruises. I don't know if he took out his frustration on her, but it sure felt like it. When I started 9th grade, the harassment kicked up a notch. Like, seriously kicked up. I was in FFA, and we had a barn at my school where we kept animals for rodeos and stuff. I loved this barn. I had my own goat, and I was always the first kid there. Jose knew I loved these animals. He also knew I was always the first one there, around 7 a.m. every day. He knew I'd find them. There had been 11 goats. He kicked 2 of them to death, sliced up 4 and mixed rat poison in with all of the goats' feed. We didn't find out about the feed until we lost 2 more. How did I know it was him? I decided not to go to school that day. When I got home he was there asking if I was okay. He was acting super nice and concerned, but I immediately just got my dogs and locked myself in my room. I hadn't even told my mom about what happened yet, and the cops didn't even know who I was. I literally just reported it to the teacher and ran home. No one else knew what had happened except for a senior and the teacher. There was no way he would have known what had happened. The senior didn't have a cell phone, and the teacher was still dealing with the police when I had left. I thought about what if the school had called home, let him know what had happened, but the principal hadn't even gotten to the school yet when I left. The only adults on campus had been the cops, my teacher, and maybe a few stray teachers or janitorial staff. What really made it clear was when he mentioned details about it he couldn't possibly know. Like, how the organs from the slashed goats were arranged. So yeah, at this point, I was at 100% danger mode. 14-year-old me even started researching curses to chase him away and protect myself online. The school was trying to cover up the barn attack as wild dog attacks because it'd look bad if the supposedly secured campus had something so bad happen, so none of the teachers, the people who I was supposedly able to talk to, were able to help me at risk of their jobs. The school's principal was really big on trying to make the school nationally recognized, and goat murders were definitely not in the cards for that. It didn't help that the principal had used money meant for security cameras on something else, so she was desperate to hide the fact that there was no footage of the incident. Meanwhile, my mom was never home. My grandparents were over 6 hours away and didn't believe me. The police never responded to the report I filed. At this point, every adult in my life who I was supposed to be able to rely on was practically ignoring me. Meanwhile, Jose continued advances. I literally overwhelmed myself with school activities to make sure I was never home, like my sister had done before me. I was in theater, jock, art club, digital design club, and more just to make sure I got to school early and left late. I was literally driving myself insane to keep myself too busy to be bothered, but I was also afraid. I kept these clubs around me, invited them to my house constantly. It was an attempt to show him, see, I have these people here. If something happens to me, they'll notice. I was stupidly trying to prove that if he did anything to me, it'd be obvious. That a big gaping hole would appear in the school and alarms would go up. After the goat thing, I was terrified of him, but no one I should have been able to rely on would help me. Luckily, he was arrested near the end of my freshman year. My mom was arrested too. I never saw him after that. I think he's still in jail. While the adults tried their best to keep what had happened from me, I was able to look everything up since news stories love this. You know what finally got him arrested? One of my mom's prostitutes was caught and she gave him and my mom up. To add to the pile of fear, I found out he may have been involved in kidnappings of Texan girls to Mexico. My mom later told me that he used to threaten to have my sister or I taken to Mexico, or that he'd attack us to control her. So, he never actually attacked my sister or I beyond his harassment because of whatever my mom did behind the scenes. She never told me the full story. I've since moved from the town, and my sister's changed her last name, but I still sleep with a knife and now a gun in case Jose decides to come back. But really, let's not meet again.